When she got home, she wondered what to do next. She needed to find out who that man in the photograph was. How was it that she was in such compromising situations with someone and she can't remember even the slightest thing about it? So she brought out her laptop and began to search, but nothing came up after spending hours on it. She decided she would have to get a more tech-savvy person to help her out. Maybe that was something she was missing in her search, because there was no way a person in this age and time will not have a single digital print. She got up stretched and went to the kitchen to find what to eat again for the 100th time this evening. Being pregnant is something else, she thought to herself, feeling a bit sad that she didn't have anyone to share this journey with. Her aunt was out of the question ever since she heard that the wedding will no longer take place. She had warned her never to come near her again, though her dad had been calling more often now, but she doesn't feel keen enough with him to share her sensitive side. She was never the friendship kind of person, so she doesn't have any friend at all. Ethan had been the only true friend she ever had. Sarah sat down on the floor and began to cry as emotions overwhelmed her, as if the realization of her predicament just dawned on her. As she lay there crying, she heard her phone ringing, but she was too overwhelmed to put her emotions in check in order to pick it, so she let it ring out. When she eventually got up from the floor and got her phone, it was her dad again. She called him back and he asked to see her. She wanted to say no, but she was feeling so lonely and dejected that any company would help. So for the first time ever, she sent him her house address because she was too tired to go anywhere now. Maybe it is time for someone to know about her baby. When her dad came, she was a bit surprised to see him alone. She expected that his wife would tag along, but in a way she was glad, because she wasn't in the mood for any unnecessary pleasantness now. She served her dad a drink and some snacks, sitting down as she waited for him to say what he had come to say. Mr. Clems looked at his daughter, and his heart broke at how sad and lean she looked. He couldn't help but feel as though he had failed not just her, but his late wife. The only child they could have before she fell ill and died has been neglected and treated so poorly by him. He was supposed to be her protector and provider, but his cowardice had led him to abandon her, neglecting her pleas for attention and love, and choosing to believe everyone over her. He knows she had lost whatever regard or love she once had for him, but now he has gotten his senses back. He will fight for his daughter until she had forgiven him, and maybe, just maybe, he will get another chance to be the father he has never been to her. When the news of her broken relationship got to him, he had felt devastated because he thought that she was at least getting the love and acceptance he had denied her, and for whatever reason Ethan chose to break his daughter's heart, he will stand by her and do his best to ensure she never feels alone and abandoned again. No matter how many times she rejects him, he will be here waiting until she believes in him again. Then he can love her as only a father can. Her giving him her address is a huge step towards the mending of their relationship. She has never allowed him into her personal space before. Maybe God has forgiven him and is giving him another chance to do better, so he will utilize it to the best of his ability. Please, Pumpkin, he began with his pet name for her. Please, don't call me that again, Zara interrupted him. You don't just wake up one day and decide that I am your daughter again, and you expect that everything will fall into place as it used to be. If you have something to say, please say it. I am actually tired. Okay, I am sorry, her dad had said solemnly, feeling the weight of the distance he had created between them. I came because I wanted to apologize for neglecting you when you needed me most. I only remarried after your mother's death because I felt I won't be enough for you. I believed you needed a mother's love to also help you heal from the loss of your mother. When she started complaining of your attitudes, I didn't stop to think properly about it, so I took out my frustrations on you. forgetting you were just a child who was probably missing her mom. I am sorry. I never gave you the chance to be the child you were supposed to be. And when your aunt started calling about your behavior with her, I took the easy way out and ignored your silent pleas. I was a selfish coward. I didn't have the courage or strength to handle the effect you're coming to live with me will cause with your stepmother and siblings. So I felt it would be better to stay with your mother's people. Please, my daughter, forgive your foolish father, he pleaded, tears running down his eyes. First, Zara began, burning with anger. I never did any of those things your wife told you I did. She would starve me and force me to do chores I have no idea how they are done. And when it is close to the time you were supposed to come back, she will force me to have my bath and eat. But as you know, if I don't eat when I'm very hungry, I would like to eat again. If not, I will get a stomach upset. Hold on, her father interrupted her. What do you mean by Vivian makes you do chores and doesn't give you food when you return from school? Exactly as you have had it, Zara exclaimed. I always told you. It wasn't as she was saying. But I was always the liar since you married her. You never gave me a chance to defend myself. You never once asked me what the problem was. I was a little girl who just lost her mother. I was confused. I was in pain because I believed mommy ran away, because I was being naughty. I was trying to be a good girl so maybe mommy will come back. I was supposed to be your daughter, but you treated me as though I was the reason she left. No, no, Mr. Claims cried out. I never knew any of this, my child. I wasn't aware, please. You didn't know because you chose not to. The truth was glaring you in the face, but you chose not to see it. For whatever reason that seemed good to you then. Did you know Aunt Faith made me hawk in order to feed in her house? She never allowed me to go to school because there was no money. And my father is refusing to help because I was a rebellious child, she would say to me. So I have to hawk things in the evenings if I wanted to eat. Mr. Clem stared at his daughter in disbelief, lost for words. How could he have been so clueless to his own child's tragedy? How did he become so nonchalant and careless that his own daughter suffered this much while he was still alive and well? He was sending monthly payment to his sister-in-law Faith for Zara's upkeep and increases it each time she calls to complain about Zara's misbehavior. Every time he has sent the amount she stipulated with Zara's school fees and upkeep. So why is he hearing that his own child wasn't allowed to go to school and eat? But Zara was not done talking. I wore pieces for my monthly flow. I had to cut up my old clothes so that I don't bleed on my own body. Zara said, her voice breaking up. I only get my undies from thrift wear. Or, if I don't have enough saved up, I will sew it with needle and thread for my worn-out clothes that I have washed thoroughly. I met Ethan on my hawking adventure. It was Ethan who paid for my final exams. Him and his mom were responsible for me until I finished my master's. They were the reason I survived Anti-Faith's cruelty and wickedness. Zara was crying full blown now, her voice breaking apart with each word. Her dad had placed his head on his hands and was weeping bitterly. Never in his imagination could he have thought this level of dehumanization on anyone, much less his own daughter. And she had tried to tell him. She had tried so much to tell him. But as before, he had ignored her cries for attention and love, excusing himself again with the fact that she was just acting out as a teenager. He wasn't a rich man in the conventional way, but he was more than comfortable and capable of taking care of his own children. The two kids he had from this current wife are more than well taken care of. They had never lacked for anything all their lives and are currently doing well for themselves in their chosen careers. How did he let things get this bad with his first seed? How did he let a motherless child become a pawn in other people's games. No wonder she never wanted anything to do with him, because at this point, he doesn't want anything to do with himself either. Not knowing what else to say or do, he got on his knees at her feet, holding on to her knee as she wept so bitterly. All he could say in between the heavy sobs was, "I am sorry, my child. I am so sorry." At this point, he was no longer asking for her forgiveness. At some level, he doesn't want to be forgiven so easily. He only prayed for her healing from the brutality she had to go through in the hands of those who were supposed to protect her. She had been an abandoned child, a lonely and abandoned child in the midst of a crowd. He was at the head of this table. He will start the retribution from himself. He will stop trying to force himself on her, but he will ensure he was available for whenever and wherever she would ever need him from here henceforth. He was going to deal with those two women who lied against an innocent child for their own personal gain. He couldn't believe he had been living with and pampering a woman who ensured his daughter was driven out of his sight, where she would have been most protected with her lies and bitterness. Never once had she suggested bringing her back, and each time he had brought up the matter, she had deflected it. Thank goodness his children are grown and independent. He doesn't think he can live with her anymore. He knows that he is not innocent, and he encouraged their attitude. But he has given her the best of himself, and he has nothing more to offer her. The rest of his days is going to be devoted to his daughter Zara and his other children. As for his sister-in-law, he will think of the proper punishment for her for treating her own sister's child like an orphan who has no one in the world, while extorting him and turning a father against his own daughter. He couldn't comprehend the level of wickedness it took to do that, but he will ensure she gets it hot. By the time he had made this conclusion, Zara had stopped crying. But as he made to stand, she said, "I am pregnant, Daddy." He sank back on his knee, not knowing what to feel at that very moment. His daughter just called him Daddy, a name he has not heard from her since she went to live with her aunt. Or the fact that she just opened up to him. Or was it the fact that she was pregnant? She was carrying his grandchild and had been left alone once again by the ones she trusted and loved. He doesn't care what their reasons were, but they had abandoned her just like everyone she had ever cared about had done, including him. What a life this precious child has been having. He made to hold her hands, but waited. But when she didn't object, he went ahead. "It is going to be all right now, my child," he said gently. "Daddy is here, and I promise you, I will never again abandon or leave you. I will be here for as long as you need me, I promise." Zara nodded and hugged him, and in that moment he knew there was nothing that felt as good in the world than that hug in that moment. He choked and hugged her right back, standing on his feet, carrying her along. They remained in that embrace for the longest time, each receiving and giving as they both needed. That day began the healing that would give room to their daughter-father relationship. Mr. Clems making sure he was at her beck and call. He moved from his house after putting it up for sale, moving to a much smaller apartment close to his daughter's residence, so he would be more reachable. He had gone through 3 babies with 2 women, so he had a fair knowledge of how difficult it can get. He wanted to be as close as possible. He had filed divorce after he explained to his other children what their mother had done and his complacent role in the whole drama. But he doesn't want to live with someone who treated an innocent grieving child that way. If the need arises, she might frame him up and get away with it. His children had understood and had reached out to their sister. The relationship is still at the awkward stage, but he believes with time they can find mutual understanding in each other. He had sued his sister-in-law for extortion and child abuse. Right now, she's cooling her heels in jail, and the husband is selling off what he can lay his hands on to offset the bill they had been charged with. He won't let them off. They will face the full force of the law. So now he was an expectant grandpa, and his world couldn't have been any better, except for the occasional sadness he sees across his daughter's face. But he doesn't know what else he could do. He had been doing some digging concerning the pictures, and so far nothing has come up. But he knows it is only a matter of time. Truth will always be found out, for there is nothing that can be done against the truth but for the truth. So he will wait until the truth shows itself, so his innocent daughter can be vindicated and be at peace, and he will ensure no one ever hurts her again, as long as he had breath in him. Zara had gone to pick her children from school one cold day, enjoying the ambience of her new environment. It has been 2 years since she relocated to another country with her twins, with help from her father, who was doing everything he can to ensure that she and her babies had the best life. He had been there, and it sometimes feels as though he was never not there. Her pregnancy journey had been so smooth, with her dad waiting on her hand and foot. Looking back now to the days when he had not been present in her life, she saw that those past experiences, both the good and the bad, had helped to shape her into the woman she is now. Even though some of the people involved only meant to cause her harm, but in all they did, God has turned around their bad intentions to become her strength. Her stepmother had the intention of cutting her off from her father for whatever reason, but she only succeeded at making her gain the experience and the wisdom of the elderly from her grandmother. However briefly that may have been, but some of the things her grandma had taught her had stayed with her, shaping her perspective and outlook in life, and it was part of what helped her to survive her aunt's cruelty. And her aunt's cruelty had made her physically strong and emotionally stable, not to crumble at the slightest sight of the storm. All this had helped her go through her breakup, pregnancy, and now the journey into motherhood. So no matter what, she can't regret any of her experiences, and God has helped her restore the wasted years with her dad. For it does not seem like she had missed much, and she's so glad that her kids will have him in their lives. Even though she sometimes finds herself torn between the joy of motherhood and the ache of losing Ethan, but despite the pain of his rejection, she devotes herself to raising her twins, drawing strength from the love she feels for them. As she drove through the busy afternoon traffic, thinking and reminiscing, she didn't hear the car honking and signaling for her to stop. Her kids were sleeping at the back seat. They must have had an adventurous day. She smiled, looking at them through the rearview mirror. Her gift from the Almighty, she calls them, Zina and Zion. They were perfection. From the moment she held them at the hospital, she knew, without a doubt, that they were her home and her safe place. With them, she would never be a castaway, a reject, or the one who doesn't belong. She knew, finally, she had her own, the ones she can protect without being questioned, and in protecting them, she found her peace and security. She stopped at the local pastry to get them some ice cream and snacks. She wasn't supposed to indulge them, but it is only for a while. She will stop. She promised that part of her brain that was always right and disciplined. As she came down from the vehicle, another car parked in front, and someone hurriedly came down from the vehicle, rushing towards her. Zara stood rooted, looking at the familiar face she hasn't seen in 3 years. Ethan stood in front of her, looking so haggard and bushy. "Zara, please," he began, looking as though he wanted to cry. "I have been looking for you for 3 years. Please, can we talk? I need to explain," he continued to plead, when Zara didn't say a word. Eventually, she recovered herself and said at last, "Why are you looking for me?" Please, can we go somewhere quiet and talk? Ethan replied. No, sir. I am in a hurry, Zara said, suddenly remembering that her babies were in the running car and their father, who doesn't know of their existence, was standing right there. She made to move away from the car, but it was too late because Ethan was looking into her car as though he had seen a ghost. She quickly used her body to block his view as Zion woke up and began to cry. Ethan looked up at her face then, astonished but unable to find his voice. He had thought he was coming to beg for her forgiveness and see if there was any chance on earth that she was still single and able to give him a chance. But not only is she not single, but she already has 2 kids. 2! His mind screamed. But why does the boy look like a miniature of him? Or was that his mind playing games at him? She was blocking his view so he couldn't be certain. Ethan, I don't know what you are doing here or how you possibly knew I was here, but please, leave me alone. Every time I came back for us to find a way forward, you were very clear about not wanting to have anything to do with me ever again. I respected your decision. I beg of you now, please respect mine. Leave me alone. Zara, please. I found out who framed you. Let's talk, please. Ethan, it has been 3 years plus. That part of my life is past. I do not want to go back there again. I have moved on, so you should do the same too. By this time, Zion was on a full shout mode, so she couldn't stall anymore. Before his sister wakes up and joined the fray, Zara opened the car door and carried her baby, going around to the front passenger side so that they would be out of the sun. Ethan stood where he was, looking at them, not believing what his mind was telling him. But now, more than ever, he is not letting her out of his sight again. He has to prove what he already knows. His mother will be shattered if this is actually true. She's already so guilt-ridden, as if she was the monster that shattered Zara's heart. He was the one who broke every promise he ever made to her. It was him who destroyed every chance Zara gave him after that. So he doesn't understand why his mother is feeling so guilty about his own decision. It wasn't as if she would have been able to do anything to change his mind at the time. But now, if what he suspects is true, how can he look them in the face? Ethan stood where he was under the sun, not feeling anything but the pain of regret in his heart. He suddenly changed his mind and went back to his car, taking note of her car plate number. He doesn't want to upset her any further. He will have his chance. Now is not it. Zara looked up from soothing Zion. I was shocked to see that Ethan was no longer there. For a moment, her heart skipped in disappointment. But she was quick to catch herself. Why would she be disappointed? She chided herself. But it was with a little struggle she brought her mind back together and faced her kids. She changed her mind about the pastries and ice cream. Putting Zion down in his car seat, she drove home trying her best to forget this afternoon's encounter with Ethan, even though seeing him has resurrected all the feelings, the pain, the anguish she had to go through when he broke off their engagement and cancelled their wedding, without so much as a second thought. Luckily, the kids slept early that day, as if sensing their mother's turmoil. She decided to leave every other thing and went to bed early as well. She felt too tired to do anything else than lying down. Ethan stood in front of the mirror, his reflection a stark reminder of the man he used to be. The memories of Zara's tear-streaked face haunted him, each line etched with the pain he had caused her. With a heavy heart, he sat, remembering how she had cried and begged for a chance to prove her innocence. Till today, he still doesn't understand why the love he had for her turned into such hatred at the sight of those pictures, because there was no other word he could use to describe the emotion that rose up inside of him at the sight of the pictures. There was nothing anyone would have said that would have made much difference with the intensity of the hatred in his heart. Suddenly, a memory he had completely disregarded at the time resurfaced, and he jumped up from the sheer force of it. He could remember a year after her last visit to his office. His PA, who was leaving his services to further her studies, had given him a piece of crumbled looking paper and told him to read it. Opening it, he saw a pregnancy test result. What is the meaning of this? Ethan had asked, feeling angry and confused at the same time. Sir, that paper was thrown into the trash by Zara the last time she was here. I watched her hold on to that piece of paper like her life depended on it. So it was shocking to me that on her way out she crumbled and threw it away. I went to pick it up out of curiosity and was shocked to realize it was a pregnancy test result. She must have been here that day to tell you the news, but you didn't give her an audience. But why are you giving it to me now? Ethan queried, his heart lurching in his chest. Well, I have tried so many times in the past year to tell you of my suspicion, but any mention of her name brings out your wrath. I am only able to do this now because I am leaving. There is no more consequences. Sir, if you will permit me to speak. Go ahead. You were already doing that, Ethan said, distractedly still looking at the paper. I don't have the full details, and I do not believe the rubbish the papers were printing. But if there is any chance that that pregnancy is yours, please overlook whatever the differences are between you two and take part in your child's life. I don't think she would have been here if the child wasn't yours. I am a product of one parent. Though my mom was a superwoman, she did her best and I have turned out well. But I believe there is a reason why it takes two people to make a baby. If one person was enough, I don't think two persons would have been required to participate in the making. So I believe each person must play their part for that child to have a balanced life. If then one party decides not to show up, I believe the child will still be fine. But it would have been so much better if both were available to give what they are uniquely made to give to the child. I am sorry, she chuckled, a little embarrassed. Whatever for? Ethan asked her. Well, I forgot myself and I just kept talking. No. I appreciate your input. In my place, there is a proverb that says, Onye na-amaro, ibe zie. He who doesn't know will be taught by his neighbor. So I am grateful for your opinion, and I thank you for bringing this to my attention. I am truly indebted to you, Ethan said, standing up from his chair to shake the hand of his now former secretary. I promise you that I will not be absent from this child's life if his or her mother will give me a chance. But I will do all I can to be part of his or her life now that I know of her existence. Thank you once again. You are welcome, sir, she said, smiling, satisfied that her mission was successful. Now she can go her way without any disturbance. She only prays that there is a reconciliation, not only for the children, but between her boss and his ex-fiancé. When she was done speaking, she picked her bag and the box filled with her personal effects and walked out into the sunshine. Ethan stood where she had left him, lost in thought. How can he get to Zara now? The landlord of the building she was renting had called him some months ago to come collect a refund of the balance of her rent because she didn't stay the whole year, and she refused to collect it, directing the man to call Ethan instead. So if she wasn't where he had rented for her, where would she be? Ethan pondered. Her aunt, he exclaimed at the empty office, feeling relieved. He immediately shut down his computer and hurried out the door. Getting to the old address where her aunt and her family lived, he was shocked to find out they no longer lived there. But luckily, he met an old neighbor who recognized him. After all the pleasantries, Ethan found out that Aunt Faith and her family had relocated to the village after a prison ordeal with Zara's father. Ethan went home, determination burning in his heart. The following day, he set out to Aunt Faith's husband's village. Zara had told him a lot about the place, but he was surprised that a lot of the information was still stored in his memory. He was nevertheless happy that he could still remember. He asked a lot of questions along the way, but eventually he located the village, and by description and names he was directed to their family house. Ethan knew it was not sheer luck that has made it possible for him to locate them easily, so he hoped God, who had been guiding his steps, will continue until it is perfected. Where he saw Aunt Faith, he could hardly recognize her. As a matter of fact, he only went to the woman to ask about Aunt Faith. But Aunt Faith recognized him immediately and began to scream. Ethan was taken aback at first, scared if he had gone to disturb a mentally unstable person. But the man running towards him looked so much like Aunt Faith's husband, even though he was looking lean and unkempt. But when he spoke, Ethan had no doubt that he had come to the right place, because that is definitely Uncle Emeka, Zara's uncle. He was holding on to Aunt Faith, trying to calm her down. Woman, stop screaming like a mad woman this instant, before you assemble the whole village to this place. He turned to look at the stranger, causing the commotion, the shock making him let go of his wife suddenly, unbalancing her in the process. Ethan was so confused, not knowing which of them to help first. He decided and went to Aunt Faith. After a few minutes of chaos and confusion, Aunt Faith was calm enough to sit still, but she never took her eyes off Ethan, and her husband instructed one of their sons to get a chair for him. When the adults were seated, Uncle Emeka cleared his throat and proceeded to ask Ethan how he located them and why he came in the first place. Meanwhile, Aunt Faith was busy crying softly, murmuring between sobs. Ethan decided to pay attention to her husband and answered his questions as they kept coming. When he seemed satisfied with the answers he had gotten, Aunt Faith's husband asked Ethan what he needed from them, seeing as they were no longer in communication with Zara. It was now Ethan's turn to ask questions. What happened? He began. Why did Zara cut you people off? You were her only family. Oh ho! Please help me answer that question very well, Aunt Faith exclaimed suddenly, standing up, her voice clear as a bell. Uwa bia nuru no. Let the world come and hear, oh, she continued to shout, hitting her laps intervally, almost dislodging her wrapper. At this point, Uncle Emeka was fed up. He stood up angrily and half carried, half dragged her inside. He came out almost immediately, apologizing to Ethan. Please, I am sorry about that. Ever since she came out from prison, the name Zara triggers her like what I don't understand. What has Zara got to do with her going to jail? Not jail, my dear, Uncle Emeka corrected. Police cell. Okay, sir, Ethan replied. Please tell me what happened. Uncle Emeka went ahead to tell him all that transpired between them and Zara's dad. Ethan was stunned beyond words. The cruelty of these people he called Zara's family. He knew they maltreated her with the hawking and starvation, but he truly thought they didn't have access to money to fund her education. But to hear that her father had been sending money, not only for her education but also for her general upkeep, and they still had gone ahead, not only to deny her education, but also her basic provisions. That was the height of wickedness for him. It seems he had come to the wrong people to look for Zara. She was wise in cutting off from them, and even though he felt pity for the children, who are innocent in this whole drama, but he didn't feel any sorry for their parents who lost everything after the court mandated them to pay back every penny that Zara's dad had given them for her upkeep, or the fact that Aunt Faith went to jail. He got up seeing that his mission was somehow futile, but before he left, he gave Uncle Emeka a bundle of cash and the provisions he brought. As he was about to drive off, Uncle Emeka halted him and said, The last I heard of Zara, her father was getting her ready to relocate to another country, but I don't have the details. That is all I know. My dear, he continued, I don't know what the truth is, but I want you to know that Zara is a good girl. I regret the way I and my wife treated her, but I don't believe what the papers said about her, and I hope your quest yields success to you. Amen. "Thank you, sir," Ethan said, touched by the man's kind words. As he drove off from the village at sunset, he viewed the fallen man in his rear-view mirror and wished that they both had treated that poor motherless girl better when they had the chance. But unlike Uncle Emeka, who had given up on ever obtaining Zara's forgiveness, he was not giving up until he had confirmed what that piece of paper said. And as long as she was unmarried, he will fight for her heart. And if mercy would be shown, perhaps, just maybe, she will be his again. If he's ever given a chance to love her again, he's going to treasure every moment, every second with her. And nothing will ever be allowed to come between them again. Ethan vowed as he drove into the sunset, hoping against hope that he is given another chance. His quest to find Zara led him down a winding path filled with false leads and dead ends. Each new clue seemed to slip through his fingers like sand, leaving him more and more frustrated, but determined than ever. After months of searching, Ethan's perseverance has finally paid off, but it happened when he wasn't even looking. He had traveled to Zara's location to sign off on a deal his company has been pursuing for months now. Coupled with his relentless search for Zara, he had been under untold stress. But the shocking joy of actually seeing her on that highway was nothing short of a miracle. He had nearly missed his appointment with the investors, but throughout the meeting, his mind had been filled with the pictures of Zara and the two children. So, as he stood in that hotel room, remembering all these things, he wrote down her plate number and went out. After getting the information he needed, he went to bed, sleeping without a nightmare for the first time in years. He woke up with Zara's image behind his eyes. When he got to the address, he stood afar and waited. He knows that he is behaving like a stalker. She will probably pack up and leave again if she ever finds out. But what else is he supposed to do? Ethan argued with himself as he stood watching her house. After a few minutes, he gave in and left, choosing to wait until he can meet her on a neutral ground. At least now he knows where she is, which was far more than he ever had since he started looking for her. For more than a week, Zara avoided the route that led her through the pastry shop and chose the longer way instead because she was afraid. No, not afraid. She is done nothing wrong. So why would she be afraid? So she wasn't afraid. She just does not want to meet Ethan now. She wasn't ready. She doesn't think she will ever be ready, she told herself. She knows she was lying to herself, but she doesn't want to face the truth yet. Yes, she missed him. She missed him so terribly that it was a shock to her that she didn't jump into his arms when she saw him. Her love for him has not diminished one bit, despite his lack of empathy with the photo incident which led to their breakup. She doesn't think she would fault him 100%. The pictures were too real. That at some point she was trying to remember if she ever met that guy without recollecting. So imagine how it would have been for another person. But like she said, she was not ready to face all of that. So avoiding him for now would be her safest bet. On a fine Saturday afternoon, 2 weeks after their first encounter, Zara went to answer a knock on her door and froze as she saw who stood there. Ethan stood outside Zara's door, his heart pounding in his chest. When she opened the door, their eyes met, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the years of separation melting away in an instant, Zara knew she could not hide anymore. It was only a matter of time anyway. So she stepped away, inviting him in. Ethan couldn't believe what was happening, but he didn't hesitate to go in as Zara gave the silent invitation. She served him coffee and sat down quietly. Ethan cleared his throat, not sure of what to say, now that he was looking at her. "I am so sorry, Zara," he began. "I am sorry for hurting you, for not fighting for us like you tried to do. I have regretted my decision ever since. I never protected you. I broke every promise I made to you." "Ever since when?" Zara asked coldly, interrupting him. Her voice sending fear right into Ethan's heart, making him doubt the invitation. What if she never forgives him? He panicked. The fear must have shown on his face, because Zara's gaze softened, but before he could catch it, she looked away and stood up. I asked the question, she said. Well, 2 years ago, Evelyn, my secretary, resigned. But before she left, she gave me a piece of paper that you threw away on the last day you came to the office. Zara sat back on the couch looking at him with shock, remembering a piece of paper, but she needed to be sure, so she asked. A pregnancy test result, Zara, Ethan replied, his voice catching on an emotion. Please, tell me, are the kids ours? So because you felt I must have your child, you decided to come back? No, baby. Who is your baby? Zara retorted. I'm sorry. That just fell off my mouth. I'm very sorry. But I didn't look for you because of the child. But the baby made it possible for me to look for you. Please, make it make sense or leave my house, Zara said angrily. I don't know how to explain it, Zara. The moment I saw those pictures, my heart was immediately filled with so much hatred that I couldn't break out of it. But the instant I touched the test result paper, something left me. I know it sounds like an escape or a lie, but this is nothing but the truth. I suddenly felt as though I could think on my own again. Your picture has never left my mind since that day, unlike before. I still don't understand why I reacted the way I did to you. I loved you, Zara. I loved you with every fiber of my being. And there was nothing, absolutely nothing that would have been able to make me turn my back on you. I just don't understand why I did. Please, these past 2 years has been the worst years of my life. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I can't do much. The work that has been my solace these years is becoming a Herculean task. I can't continue this way knowing how much I've hurt you with my decisions and actions. Ethan stopped now and crying. Great sobs. Ethan stopped talking now because his frame was shaking with great sobs. He was crying so uncontrollably. Zara didn't know when she went to him, wrapping her arms around him. She can't say she understands perfectly what had happened, but one thing she knows is that Ethan wasn't a liar. He had never lied to her, had never hidden the truth from her, not on anything she's ever asked him. She doesn't know the way forward for them because a lot of water had passed under the bridge. But like she has been living her life these past 3 years, she will take it one day at a time. They remained in that position, crying together for the lost years and the pain in their hearts. A new dawn was being birthed. A light was igniting in the cold, dark, recessed places of their hearts. From that day, Zara and Ethan began their slow but progressive journey towards their healing and reconciliation. It turned out that Ethan was the most amazing dad. The twins took to him immediately like they had always known him. When Ethan told his mom that he had found Zara, she didn't wait for further explanation. Rather, she took Zara's address and the next available flight out. She never waited to hear about the babies. So when she came to Zara's place and met her grandbabies, she was more broken than she had ever been. But Zara was patient and kind with the repeated apologies and crying, because somehow she knew the elderly woman needed that to unburden her guilt and heavy heart. She wanted to go stay at a hotel, but Zara would have none of that. She insisted that Grandma must stay with her for as long as she wanted. Mrs. Kenneth had never felt more humbled or blessed than at that moment. She doesn't think she will ever be able to love this kind young lady enough. But that is her mission for the rest of her days on earth. She was going to love Zara to pieces. Zara had to call her dad and told him everything that was going on. He came also to meet Ethan and his mother. He didn't mince words with them for what they put his daughter through, and he made sure they understood what would happen should Ethan ever hurt his daughter again. Zara felt sorry for Ethan and his mama, but she was proud of her daddy. It was years later that her stepmom confessed on her deathbed of being the mastermind behind the pictures, that she had hired someone and used Zara's face on another person's body, and that she had gone extra mile by putting voodoo on those pictures to enchant Ethan's mind against Zara. She died one of the most miserable deaths Zara had ever witnessed. But everyone pays sooner or later. For as long as the earth remains, seed time and harvest will never cease. And that is not only for blessings and plantings. For good or bad deeds are seeds that must be harvested. So we must be careful how we conduct our hearts, for out of it are the issues of life. And so, as the sun set on their past and rose on their future, Ethan and Zara took each other's hand and stepped into the unknown, ready to write the next step of their story together. The end. I hope you enjoyed the story. I want us to take from this story the lessons that has been taught. We have to be careful how we treat people, whether they will be of benefit to us or not. But every kindness we show to a person is a seed we are sowing on the earth. And those seeds will always come out at places where we least expect. So whether you are sowing kindness or hatred or wickedness, be rest assured that you will reap the bountiful harvest of it. There is no running away. Everyone pays sooner or later. As the Bible said, for as the earth remains, seed time and harvest will never cease. And those seed and harvest is not only for blessings, it's not only for wealth. It is also for the character, for the good, for kindness that we show to our fellow people. So every kindness is a seed. Every act of wickedness is a seed. Until the next story, please subscribe if you have not. Stay tuned and God bless you. Bye.